Mark Newman, thank you for your time. How would you describe general consumer sentiment at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's patchy is how I would describe it. I think that it's been a bit like that really for the last sort of 12, 18 months or so. I think consumers are confused about what they're supposed to be thinking. We see that the latest statistics from Westpac are saying that consumer sentiment for September's down 5% odd. But then Roy Morgan says that people are actually feeling relatively wealthy and quite confident about their finances. So I think people are a bit confused, and therefore that means they're more cautious, but they've got money to spend. So I guess that's kind of how we see it.
So to what extent are they spending on luxury items?
Yeah, we are actually having a good couple of months, recently, and I think that talks to the fact that the luxury consumer is there and is willing to spend. Our second best-selling bag this season is a bag that sells at $1,200. That's twice the price of our normal handbags. So clearly, the luxury consumer is there, and I suppose that their propensity and ability to spend is greater, and therefore not so affected by this rather uncertain economic environment.
And how has that changed over time?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same. I think that we haven't seen. I think as long as you've got a compelling environment, you're able to provide excellent levels of service, the luxury consumer is there and they're willing to spend if you provide them with the right environment and the right products.
Is it a trend we're seeing just here in Australia, or is it more so overseas?
I think that we here in Australia are seeing obviously more and more luxury consumers coming into Australia, be that as tourists or be that as investors in Australia. But the luxury market globally has been on a bit of a boom for the last 10, 15 years or so. I think things are slowing down in China. We can see there's a lot of commentary around that. But then, the biggest luxury market in the world is still the US, and the US consumers, are still continuing to shop luxury.
Given the slowdown we're seeing in the global economy and the share market wobbles around the world also, and on top of that you've got subpar economic growth in Australia, all of that combined, to what extent does that concern you?
I mean, yes, clearly, we're worried by, the commentary on the economy, and I think that does affect consumer sentiment. So, there are shoppers, there are the luxury shopper who will continue to be around, but there are other consumers who are affected by that news, and so clearly, in terms of our forecasts going forward, it's difficult really to predict, how business is going to trend.
What about the low Australian dollar? How are you navigating that?
We have a very comprehensive hedging policy, so we're hedged 24 months out, so we protect ourselves to a certain extent that way. But clearly, even with that, we need to be very focused on supplier costs and making sure that we can always keep costs to a minimum without compromising quality. And another thing that we're looking at doing is seeing if we can do some sourcing in Australia, and that's something that's been hard for us to do, in the past with our level of quality. But there are a number of manufacturers here that we can potentially work with, and that's something that we'd very much like to do.
Oroton's seen a bit of a turnaround over the past year, repositioning the brand. How's your business travelling so far this year?
Yeah, I mean, business has been reasonably positive. We issued our full year results just a couple of weeks ago and gave a little bit of, colour around how things have been trading so far this year. We're seeing double-digit like-for-like sales growth for the group, and that's across both the Oroton brand and the Gap business. So, that's positive, but it is very, very early days. So, we're relatively cautious, but we're seeing some good progress.
And where to now for Oroton, locally or internationally?
Sure, yeah. I mean, certainly we are very focused on continuing to develop beautiful products, present them in a very compelling environment. And, we believe that we can grow the brand here in Australia this year. And we're focused on that, and also focused on continuing to develop the business overseas.
Okay, Mark Newman, appreciate your time.